Hello, everyone. You know what time it is. It's time for the Game Plan Show. I'm your co-host, Trevor Rosenthal, hosting solo today on this episode, but here to bring the heat. Jason, my co-host, we miss you. We'll see you again next week, but today it's going to be me. And so we'll jump right into here. This show is dedicated to using sports to create positive change. So be ready to get inspired, uplifted, and empowered through thought-provoking conversations specific to the world of youth sports with some of the top minds in the game. Our show is brought to you by Bringing the Heat Media and 4D Athletes. So we're here today at one of my favorite places on location, First Phorm International, a great American St. Louis, great American company based here in St. Louis, Missouri. And I say it's so great because it really ties into what the Game Plan Show is all about, with surrounding ourselves with like-minded community, with friends that not only inspire us, but encourage us to get the most out of ourselves and the work that we're doing. And so I'm excited for this conversation of a good friend that I've become very fond of. And I say that because we spent some time here specifically in the gym doing some training, and he's a guy that has pushed me. And I'll tell you, this has been so important throughout my career as a professional athlete, as a human being. I've noticed there's times where I thought I was at the top of my game. I thought, Trevor, you're working pretty hard. You're doing things very well. And when you get surrounded by other people, whether it be in the locker room, whether it be at work, other people that are operating at a high level, you'll realize, and I realize this in professional sports, there's always somebody that's working harder than you. There's somebody that's working smarter than you. And that's not a discouragement. That's just to say, hey, maybe I'm capable of a little bit more. So being surrounded by people that are going to be able to push you and expand the way you think, expand the way you go about your business to be a better person. And so I'm excited to be joined by one of those people in my life today, Mr. Nick Clements. Nick is joining us today here at First Phorm International in St. Louis, Missouri. Nick is a former educator and administrator, now working at First Phorm, and he's going to be able to dive into a lot of these topics that we talk about, specific to sports, specific to athletes, to parents and coaches, really trying to get the most out of their team, out of their kids, and the youth that we have in the world. And I'm excited to jump into this conversation. And Nick, why don't you just start out here? Thank you again for joining us. This is going to be a fun conversation, and maybe just give a little bit of background of what's led you to working here at First Phorm and what your role in the company is right now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate the introduction and thought-provoking conversations. I'm gonna try and do that for you. So, so I first started. I'm from St. Louis, lifelong St. Louisan. I'm extremely proud to be from St. Louis, and if anybody's willing to listen, I'll tell them all about all the different reasons why I love this place. So I was going to school, got my degree in exercise science, and I was wanting to be a coach. So I was getting my master's in education, and in part of that, I was student teaching, and I got a job at this place called Supplement Superstores, which if you're not familiar with Supplement Superstores, it's retail stores that Andy Frisella and Chris Klein started back in 1999, and they sell a whole bunch of different supplements. So that's where I kind of got my start and introduction to First Phorm, is because they, sell a lot of First Phorm products. And when I was there, I worked there for about a year and a half, and I got a teaching job. So I left, but I always kept a really strong relationship and bond with the guys that I worked with. I would even, come and see them all the time, even if I just wanted protein bars or energy drinks or anything like that. But for 7 years, I was a teacher. I taught PE, health, weight training. I coached girls golf, boys basketball, baseball, and softball. And I was like, okay, what's next? Like, how can I continue to push myself? And I wanted to get into administration. So I went to Mizzou and was getting my degree in administration to become an athletic director and a principal. And in that time, though, I really missed the culture and the environment that I experienced at S2. So then I reached out to the guys I knew, Aaron Summers specifically, and was just like, hey, is First Phorm hiring in any capacity? Like, you guys looking for any help around, because it was right around Thanksgiving, it was a little after. And he was like, yeah, you can come work at the warehouse. And I was like, perfect. So I would teach and coach during the day, and then at night and on the weekends, I would work in the warehouse. And then that turned into, okay, this is much more than, a warehouse job. This is an actual like career opportunity. So for a year and a half, I mean, I was teaching and coaching and working at First Phorm in some capacity. And finally I was like, you know what, I got to make a decision. And I did finish my principal certification. So I never fully got into administration, but I remember the day I passed all that stuff, I went in and told them like, hey, I'm actually going to be done teaching after this year. And I'm going to go work at First Phorm full time. And so, I didn't expect people to understand, but in my heart, I knew that this is where I was meant to be. And like, I essentially came back home. So I love the education career. It taught me a lot. It set me up for a lot of success here. This is where I'm supposed to be because I just love the people and ultimately I love what we do. So, long story, but yeah, I've been associated with the brand in some capacity for a little over 11 years.
Yeah. If anybody's familiar with the brand here, it's contagious.
Yeah.
So like you mentioned, you got a little taste of it and then you quickly realize you just want more and more.
Yep.
And it's a machine, man. And it ever since I met you and met the people here at First Phorm, I've always had a sense that Nick is such a valuable asset to this company because of what you mentioned, your background as an educator, high level education. I mean, you're a smart guy and you've put a lot of work into being educated to serve the youth athletes very well. And that's what you're doing now at First Phorm and working with the athletes on the amateur side, working with athletes on the collegiate side, working with professional athletes and serving them to represent the First Phorm brand, but also building them as people. And you're well equipped to do that with your experience as an educator and the athletic programs that you ran at the school. So let's dive into the mental side here and the mental game that we love to talk about on the show. Really why self-limiting beliefs don't serve us and what we can do to overcome them when they creep into our mind. And I love this conversation. You as a very disciplined man will be able to give us some good insight, but how do you, with the athletes that you're working with, how do you help or how can we help young athletes develop a healthy mindset around sports, competition, and their own performance?
Yeah. So, one of the big things is, and it's perfect that you said it, self-limiting beliefs, because a lot of times it makes me think, and maybe it's divine intervention, I don't know, but there was a quote I actually heard this week in our Monday meeting that we have here, and I've heard it before, but like it's just interesting how like sometimes you hear certain things in certain times of your life and they really stick. And this one was, my biggest fear is not that you aim too high and miss. My biggest fear is that you aim too low and hit. And so self-limiting beliefs, a lot of athletes out there, they try and set the bar a little too low because they want to ensure that they achieve their goal, right? And my big premise as I've gone through life and learned is that, you're not supposed to accomplish every goal you set. If you're accomplishing every goal you set, you're not pushing yourself to your limit, right? And we never want to truly reach our full potential. We want to pursue our potential because the goal is when you reach these goals, that should open your mind to what more is possible, like what else is possible, right? And you should continue to stretch yourself and test yourself. But far too often in life, especially with athletes, they play it safe because they're so afraid of failing. They're so afraid of just not succeeding. Whereas what should be taught is like, hey, failure is part of it, right? And I love all sports, but baseball is my love. I got baseball seams on my heart, right? And I know you're the same way. And it's like, that's why it's such a great game because it's such a great analogy to life because that game is built on failure, right? And so it's just teaching athletes like, yes, success is important, but also too, failure is not a terrible thing if you choose to look at it the right way, right? And understand like, hey, we're going to learn from this, we're going to get better from this, and it shouldn't limit you from what you think you're capable of.
Yeah. And I had the same experience. I heard something recently in regards to failure. It's either we win or we learn. There's no such thing as failure. And having that mantra, repeating that mantra in your head, because when you do have high aspirations, when you do set the bar really high for yourself, there's going to be a lot of times where you fall short. Like we're human and life is hard. There's things that come our way that are out of our control. And even more so on the side when you are a high achiever and you're trying to do things that you haven't done. You're trying to do things that nobody around you's ever done. It's not gonna go smoothly all the time. And I've I was so fortunate with my major league career, with my professional baseball career. It really happened without me thinking, oh, Trevor, I'm going to grow up, I'm going to be a professional baseball player. These opportunities just kind of kept falling into place one after another. And I got to a point where thinking, man, what is possible? I've already done things that I never dreamed of. And now what else is there? And to me, that I hope everybody gets that realization. I'm sure a lot of people do. You get to a point in your life where, whether it be a college opportunity, with pursuing a degree or in sports, where you think to yourself, man, I never dreamed that I would be in this seat that I am today. And you have to capture that and not rest your head on that and just try and coast through. You have to continue to push yourself. And that's what's been the motivation for me. So what advice would you give to parents and coaches who are dealing with a child or athlete who is struggling with confidence or motivation?
Yeah. So, biggest thing is, and I'll probably reference him a couple times because he's one of my favorite authors. His name's John Gordon. Okay. Jon Gordon. Some people maybe haven't heard of him, but, he's really big on positivity and positive mindset. Right. And that positivity is very, it combats that mindset or that, an athlete that's struggling with that confidence. Right. And he has a thing where, you learn to talk to yourself instead of listen to yourself. Like a lot of times we listen to that internal voice saying that we can't do this or we can't do that. Whereas you're always going to hear those thoughts. Like you can't really eliminate those thoughts completely, but you can overpower them by those self-affirming things. Right. And that's one of the biggest things is teaching those young athletes that, those fears and those doubts and that struggle with confidence, that is something that every athlete deals with. And it's not just athletes. Like everybody struggles. They have that either struggle with confidence or that imposter syndrome where they feel like they're not capable or they're going to get found out. And it's just reminding yourself like that doesn't mean that you aren't capable of doing these things. It just means like recognize them for what they are. And they're just thoughts. Thoughts aren't anything. It's just something that comes into our brain. What really matters is action. And that translates. The more action you take, the more effort you put in, right? And you keep that and maintain that positive attitude, that voice will get smaller and smaller and smaller, and that confidence will rise, right? So they correlate with each other kind of invertedly, right? As that voice or as that confidence gets higher, that voice gets tinier.
Yeah, that's something that I've come to learn really as I've matured, and the more life that I've lived, obviously there's more failures involved, and there's times where I have these negative thoughts and I don't want them, but they keep coming up, and I almost get frustrated to the point where I'm thinking, why are you thinking this way? Why are you dwelling on this thing that happened? There's so much good that you could be focusing on, but this thought keeps coming up, and it's made me, to your point, realize that part's not necessarily out of my control. That first instinct, that first reaction that I might have to a situation, that's something I can't control. But to your point, what I can control is how I talk to myself when those thoughts come up. And it's an intentional override of these negative thoughts. And
perfect.
Yeah. And it's like, you have to realize this is normal. This isn't something that's just you, that you're going through as an individual, that your kid or your athlete, your young athlete is having, or even you as an adult. Don't feel isolated. And sometimes we can feel that way because we don't talk about it.
That's what makes it worse, because you feel like, if nobody educates you on that, you feel like something's wrong. You feel like you're not capable, because it's like, well, for everybody else, it looks like it's really easy, right? Because you can't see what their thoughts are. So it looks like they just have this special gene or this special thing about them where it's like, well, I struggle with confidence. And it's just understanding like, no, those people have just learned to control those thoughts, but also to understand that they're just thoughts, and your action is going to override that.
100%. And it is easy. I even look at a guy like you, Nick. You're well put together, good looking guy. You're always working hard. But even more so than that, you always have a smile on your face, and you think, oh man, life must be easy for Nick Clements. But it's not. No. I mean, it's not easy for anybody. And and this is what I want to point out. When you're around high achievers like yourself, when you're around, for me, being around a lot of professional athletes, Nick, you work with professional athletes, it's easy to assume that it's easy for them and life just, everything seems to fall in place. And what I've learned is that's not true. But what is true is that they control, and they realize at the end of the day, they're lucky to be in the seat that they have. they're going to give it their all. They're going to put in the effort, but they have this bigger view, this kind of 10,000 foot view of, at the end of the day, I'm alive. I have breath in my lungs, and I'm just going to give it my best. And however it works out is how it works out. Yeah. And I think keeping that in perspective is very helpful. So I'll just shift gears real quick and go more towards the athletic development side. So I want to ask you, you know, your experience working as an educator in the athletic department across multiple sports in the school system, and now working with amateur, professional, and collegiate athletes. What are some key principles? And you're an athlete yourself. You still play.
I refuse to hang it up. Yeah, I still play in
I love that
men's baseball league. Still play ice hockey. Like, yeah, it really is. Honestly, like, people always talk to me about it, and not going too far on a tangent here, but I just think it's extremely important to compete. Like, truly, like, you compete in the workplace and things like that, depending on what you do and everything. Like, and you're competing with yourself every day. But, like, you know, whether it is sports or something like that, like, it is very important. Competition, I view it like you have a competition muscle internally, right? And if you don't exercise it, you lose that edge. And so not only do I love playing sports and I just love everything that comes with athletics, I love that, hey, my best against your best, right? And like when I play baseball, it's like, it's still fun. You still get that heart rate up. Like, you step in the batter's box and you're like, all right, this guy's going to attack me and I'm going to give it my best. And it translates into other aspects of your life. So outside of the sports element, that's one of the reasons why it's so important to me. And I make the time for it and prioritize, you know, being able to do that, because I understand that it's going to bleed into other aspects of my life in a positive way, because I view it that way.
Yeah, you kind of hit on this question I wanted to ask you about. What are key principles of long-term athletic development, and how can coaches and parents apply those principles to help young athletes reach their full potential? And maybe break this down into terms of what you said of kind of practice over competition, and how you would approach both of those things in talking to a coach or parent.
Yeah. So I would say the key thing for long-term athletic development is, I mean, the players have to understand the importance of practice, like how preparation and practice is what gets you ready to compete at the highest level. Like, I think oftentimes practice is viewed as like a have to, we have to practice, but it's instilling like no, you get to practice, right? Like, you get to be able to prepare yourself for whatever that competition is, right? You should be thankful for that, and thankful that you're not just getting tossed in the arena and just being like, yeah, give it, you know, we'll just see where your raw talent takes you. Like, you get the opportunity to hone your craft and fine tune your skills. And that translates into the real world as well. Like, you know, you come to work. Like, there are things you need to do if you want to truly succeed outside of work on your own time, right? To prepare yourself to continue to move forward, right? And it's instilling that importance of practice and preparation, because that's the biggest thing with athletes, where you see them kind of reach their limit, is because they rely too much on their raw talent and just showing up on game day and hoping that switch flips on. And there's some athletes that are blessed enough that are able to do that, right? But that's not all, right? Most athletes need to understand that importance. So just understanding and respecting that aspect of the game, because you're going to spend more time doing that than you are actually competing in games.
Yeah. And I've seen this with, you kind of hit on it, on the athletes that are naturally gifted, maybe a little bit more than their peers, and they tend to not practice as much or slack off in some areas, where the less gifted athlete is really executing at a high level. And it's not to say that they're not performing well and not going to have a nice career, but to me, what I see is, how much are you leaving on the table? Like, what is your potential? What are you missing out on if you were doing these things a little bit better? And you know, that kind of rounds out our conversation of, hey, you have to constantly be raising your bar. Don't compare yourself to the people around you. It's an individual effort. Realize that there's always more. There's always a higher level that you could take yourself to. So, last question. We get, this is going to be a fun one, because this is what you deal with here. First Phorm International. It's at the end of the day, it's a nutrition supplement company, a sports supplement company, and you have some amazing products that you cater to the athlete population, but also just general wellness in our communities. So, what role does nutrition play in an athlete's performance, and what are just some basic nutritional guidelines for young athletes?
Oh man, I don't know if we have enough time. I'm going to get rolling on this because it's just something I'm passionate about. Well, first and foremost, I mean, nutrition is extremely important. I mean, it's how we fuel our body. It's the gas tank we put into our machine. And it's interesting because, and you can probably relate to this, is every athlete, I speak with, no matter what their level of success is, as they kind of get older, it always comes back to, man, I wish I would have prioritized this when I was playing, or I wish I would have prioritized this early. I honestly, in all my years of being in the health and fitness industry, I've never had an athlete say to me like, yeah, no, I don't really care about nutrition, or yeah, no, I wish I wouldn't have learned these things. Like it is such a beneficial thing to prioritize that nutrition. And a lot of times people make it way more complicated than it needs to be. Like, and that's why I'm happy you asked that follow up, or what are some things to prioritize? Because, you can keep it very simple. Now, simple and easy are two completely different things. Just because I say it's simple doesn't mean it's not. It's going to be difficult at times. There's going to be times where you're going to have to prioritize certain things and make it important to you. But it definitely does translate to success, on the field. And so when it comes to basic nutrition, and it's something that we always preach here, because like you said, I mean, we have high performing athletes that use our products, and we've got individuals that just want to feel better and look better that use our products. And that's our big thing. Our mission as a company is to help as many real people get real long-term results. And so when we say as many people, we want to help as many people as we can. And so big things is and even as a young athlete, protein. I mean, so many people do not understand the importance of protein. But for good reason. It's not really like there's more and more education out there on it, but there's not a lot. I mean, of education out there about the importance of protein until people get to a later age, right? So 1 gram per pound of goal body weight. So if you're a parent listening to this, if you're an athlete listening to this, it's whatever it is you want to weigh, 1 gram of that. If you want to weigh 200 pounds, okay, 200 grams of protein is what you should be trying to consume on a daily basis, right? And so that's why there's a lot of great, things out there. There's a lot of great things out there. In terms of supplements, in terms of whole food options. And so that's why, our protein powder is such a huge hit, because it really helps individuals in hitting those protein goals. So hitting your protein goal, in addition to that, understanding how many calories you need to take in, whether you want to gain weight or lose weight. And two of the other big things with athletes is hydration. Hydration is extremely important. Trying to get in at least 120 ounces of water per day, because a lot of athletes struggle with consuming enough, myself included. I mean, for a long time, I didn't even, I thought everything was water, you know what I mean? Like soda. Oh, there's water in that, right? So, but yeah, just consuming actual water. And then in addition to that is just prioritizing that movement, which is not really a struggle for athletes. But I would say young athlete, if they're not utilizing or understanding the importance of protein and how that's going to help fuel their muscle tissue and help them in building more muscle, which is something I know a lot of athletes need, that needs to become a priority.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better. And this has been a great conversation. We have a lot of good points, I think, to take away. And I appreciate you coming on the show today. And just for a quick recap, so let's run through it. First, we talked about the importance of positive self-talk,
yes,
which can be implemented for any individual right away today. Mm-hmm. You can start doing this. And it starts with first recognizing the thoughts that you're having that might be detrimental, and then replacing those with affirming, self-positive talking to yourself. And that's going to help you with your performance. And then secondly, we talked about for athletes, long-term skill development is continuing to prioritize the practice part of the game to really prepare to compete. Let the competition come out. You really stress the importance of continuing to compete throughout your career. But in order to be successful in competition, you have to understand how important the preparation side is.
Yeah, and one thing I will add to that too, especially with youth athletes, they have to love it. That's why I love with the younger athletes, from 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to almost high school, it has to be a choice for them. They can't, and although I'm not a parent yet, and working with athletes, it's got to be a love for the sport. The ones I've seen that have really succeeded and gone on, they've just always loved it, but it's because I feel like their parents set them up in a position to choose to play that sport or choose to do that activity, and it's something they've developed that passion on. It hasn't been a passion that's been pushed onto them. So because I've seen the other where they've kind of been made to play certain things or participate in certain things, and that burnout happens real quick because they don't have that internal passion for it, right? Because time blunts all emotion. Like, you get excited to play certain things, but then over time, like, that excitement goes away, right? The discipline is what moves you forward. And when an athlete loves a sport, they'll have discipline towards it, and they will respect it, and they will want to practice it. So before you can instill and teach them to enjoy practice and respect it and choose to do that, they got to have that love for it first. If they don't have that love for it, you're just going to be banging your head against the wall because they're never going to have that passion for practice.
So well said. So well said. I appreciate you pointing that out.
Yeah.
That's a topic that comes up often with our guests, and especially with athletes, professional athletes that have had long careers, and they stress the importance of making it fun at a young age.
You got to love it. Yeah. You got to have fun. You got to look forward to doing it. And so that's, I'm hoping my wife and I, have kids, and if they choose to play sports, right, the first many years that they play, it's going to be like hey, I want you to look forward to when we're driving to practice or driving to games because you love it so much. And if I ever sense that you don't, it may be time to look other ways, because I don't want you to do something you don't love, because it's just setting you up for failure and honestly, like, resentment towards whatever that activity is down the road.
Yep. I mean, you're going to be a great dad one day. I know that for sure. I'm sure a lot of these athletes you work with view you as a father figure in your role here. At First Phorm. So, and then lastly, on the nutrition side, I agree 100%. Prioritizing the protein, being aware of your calories, being aware of your hydration. At the end of the day, when you go out and you work and you put in this effort, you're draining the batteries, you're emptying the tank. We have to be intentional on how we're refueling that. So, anything else you would like to add today? This has been such a good conversation. There's so much in here.
Yeah,
that's valuable that for anybody listening.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And just a couple things, like thoughts that came into my head as we were talking about this, we spent a lot of time, talking about preparation and things like that. And there's a quote that I love actually at my desk, Josh, the guy that sits in front of me, he has it hanging on his desk, and I love it. And it just says, "The enemy thanks you for not giving 100% today." And it's like, I remind myself of that. And once again, maybe it doesn't mean anything to you, but I remind myself of that daily, of like, you know what, when I don't want to do something or when something gets difficult, there is somebody out there. There's some imaginary being that I'm thinking of. They are not just walking towards me. They are trying to chase me down. They're trying to take everything it is that I've worked for. So it just, that little reminder right there is like, okay, there's somebody that's always going to be trying to take your spot, and you got to give it 100% every day, because each day you don't, they've just gained an inch on you, or they gained a couple feet on you. And before you know it, if you let that happen enough times, they're going to be right beside you and right ahead of you, if you don't pay attention to that.
That's exactly right. And I think we can get immune to the world that we live in, especially when you step away from the field. But life, it's a competition, man. It's competitive out here. And if you're not going to go and put in the work to take what you want, someone else is going to take it from you. Yep. And that's just the truth. And that's just how it is. And so I appreciate you pointing that out. So, no, great conversation, Nick. Thanks for joining the show today. We appreciate everybody tuning in and listening, and be sure to follow us on social media, subscribe to the show on Spotify, and also let us know if there's any topics that you would like us to cover, specific guests that you would like to hear from in order to make the show better for you, the listener. Reach out. We would love to interact with this community. We've been building a strong community. Jason and I have been working hard to continue to bring experts in the field like Nick. And yeah, that's a wrap for this episode. If you liked it, give us a 5-star review. And thanks for tuning into the Game Plan, and we will see you next time.